In their last 3 matches, Arsenal have completed 59 shots, yet only have 2 goals to show for it, dropping points in the Premier League, on the brink of elimination from the Carabao Cup, and out in the 3rd round of the FA Cup, losing at home to 10-man Man United. It's been a tough week for Arsenal, and a lot of questions are being asked on what is needed to fix these issues. While they initially seem to be coping relatively well with the absence of Saka with a player like Ethan Nwaneri, the cracks really started to show in their 1-1 draw to Brighton. But Arsenal are clearly capable of making it into the final third and getting the ball into shooting positions. So to understand what's going wrong, we need to take a look at the tactical changes Arteta has made this season. Why his focus on control and dominant possession is helping them move up the pitch, but why it may also be the cause of a pretty lackluster attacking unit. Let's take a look. Welcome to talkSPORT, my name is Cormac from Football Meta. Pressure seems to be mounting on Arteta as Arsenal crash out of the FA Cup against 10-man Man United. And while it was a pretty dominant performance in terms of possession and number of chances, a great performance from Bayinde and a tight compact defensive unit was enough to take the game to penalties. Now this season Arsenal have already been through their fair share of problems. Firstly with the absence of Odegaard, and more recently after an injury to Bukayo Saka, forcing Arteta to quickly find a solution. Initially Ethan Nwaneri seemed to be the right fit, helping Arsenal pick up important wins against Ipswich and Brentford. But an injury suffered after the game against Brighton in which he scored, it was back to square one for Arteta. But before we take a look at why the absence of Saka is such a huge problem in the final third, we need to take a look at Arsenal's build-up and how they are able to consistently move the ball into the final third. Arteta's tactics have changed somewhat in recent years. From a pretty recognisable 3-2-5 or 2-3-5 shape in possession, to a more fluid system depending on specific spaces left by the opponents. In their FA Cup clash, Arsenal started in a 4-3-3, but would quickly switch to a back 3 build structure. When deep in their own half, this would be done with Raya moving off his line, giving Arsenal the extra player and easily finding their way out of Man United's press. We can see an example of that here with Odegaard being able to receive the ball away from the press, with Merino rotating over to the right and dragging away the press from Man Utd. But as they moved further up the pitch and Raya could no longer be used, this back 3 would be formed with Lewis Skelly pushing up on the left flank, either out wide with Martinelli in a central position or in the half space, leaving the flank free for Martinelli to dribble towards the centre. With Jorginho as the only holding midfielder, Merino and Odegaard were often the target in the half spaces to move away from Man United's press. And when one dropped deep, the other would push forward between the lines. Arsenal were fluid in creating this shape in the centre. At times Odegaard would drop alongside the centre-backs, and Timber would rotate more centrally. Other times Merino would push forward and Martinelli would move inside. To beat the press from a position like this, Odegaard would often move out wide on the flank, either receiving the ball or indirectly forcing Man United to move over to this flank, eventually freeing up space on the opposite side of the pitch that Arsenal were able to exploit countless times in the first half. As they moved further up the pitch, this diamond build shape continued to allow Arsenal to control the tempo, and the 3 players between the lines meant they were consistently able to find passing channels through Man United and move into the final third. In the absence of Saka and Nwaneri, Gabriel Jesus started on the right flank with Havertz as the striker, but with these central rotations and players between the lines, it was common to see Havertz move over to the right and create an overload with Jesus and Odegaard on this side of the pitch. We can see an example of Havertz moving to the right in this clip here, with Odegaard receiving the ball between the lines, with Havertz closer to Jesus on the flank, before the ball eventually moves out wide and Arsenal look for a cross into the box. Now, in their game against Newcastle, the structure was slightly different, with Lewis Skelly inverting as the double pivot more frequently, but Arsenal were still able to find players between the lines on a few occasions. But here is where we reach the first main issue that Arsenal are facing in the final third, and that is the lack of a central threat. Whether it's Havertz, Jesus, Trossard or any player that ends up playing in this position up top, their rotations and tactical instructions will mean they will rotate away from this position consistently, either moving out wide or receiving the ball between the lines and ready to turn. But the issue is that once the ball is in this position, there is no immediate threat of a ball down the middle. So the only option is for a ball to go out wide on the flank. There is one exception to this lack of a central threat, and that comes from Martinelli in their recent games, finding himself through on goal on a few times by cutting into the space behind the defensive line. But his finishing has let him down so far from these positions, and it hasn't been something Arsenal have been able to consistently rely on. Now, with a player like Bukayo Saka on the right flank, moving the ball out wide in the final third was extremely beneficial for Arsenal, as his dribbling ability means he can often beat his man, either cutting inside and finding players on the edge of the box, or more commonly dribbling on the outside before looking for cutbacks into the box. But without Saka and Nwaneri, who also gave Arsenal a similar threat, whichever player ends up on the right flank is struggling to create the same type of chance, meaning Arsenal's attacks are becoming increasingly one-dimensional. In fact, in their game against Man United, the vast majority of chances came from crosses into the box, mostly from Odegaard picking up the ball in this position on the edge of the box. In the first half, and while Man United still had 11 players, Odegaard struggled to get enough time on the ball to deliver an accurate cross, and so there was little threat from this position for the first 60 minutes of the game. While once Dalot had been sent off, Man United had to defend from a deeper position, and the lack of an extra player in midfield meant Odegaard had more space, and Arsenal started to deliver more and more balls into the box from this position. There's nothing inherently wrong with this delivery. It forces the defensive line to run backwards towards the goal, and because of the midfield rotations, Arsenal would end up with at least 3 players on the back post ready to attack these crosses. But the problem lies in the personnel trying to finish these chances, with Havertz missing some big opportunities, and Martinelli never really beating the defender in the air. Arsenal made a lot of changes in the second half in an attempt to win the game, and the introduction of Sterling did also make them a little bit more dynamic on the right flank, as he would also look to cut around the fullback and switch up the type of chances Arsenal would create. And it was a similar story on the left flank with Martinelli, looking for crosses into the box, but again few players were ready to finish off these chances. A combination of tactical changes from Arteta and the lack of their most dangerous player in Bukayo Saka has led to a pretty toothless attack in recent games for Arsenal. But this isn't the first time they've struggled to create chances from open play this season, and they have been able to rely on their threat from set pieces to nick a goal. Their equaliser against Man United came from a set piece, and their corner kick routine has caused so many issues for defences this season. But it might be starting to lose its magic, struggling to convert from these chances in their most recent matches, and defending teams knowing what to expect from these crosses. And realistically, how much can a team rely on set pieces to get them out of tricky situations all season? Personally, I just wish it didn't take them so long to take the corner in the first place. Overall, it seems clear Arsenal are in desperate need of a striker up top, and someone that can give them more of an aerial threat to meet all these crosses into the box. But questions are also starting to be asked on whether Arteta's signings over the years have actually improved the team. While the summer transfer window was initially met with a lot of excitement over players like Calafiori, Marino and Sterling, they don't seem to have pushed Arteta's project any closer to the finish line. And with so many players available in this January transfer window, who do you think Arsenal should sign to help them get over these problems they're facing? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I have more tactical breakdowns on my channel, Football Meta. Thanks for watching.